morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Good morning, Slava. Welcome back to Roshar.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good to be here.
Are you ready to get throw your hands up into some high storms and dance?
I've been waiting for it all week.
You probably have. Your life's not that interesting, as we covered before the episode.
Right, that's because I don't do as much things as you do.
It's all about the amount of things you do, folks.
Yeah.
You just have to do a lot of things, and then that makes you interesting, even if they're mundane, like myself. All the mundane things. Actually, this week I found out that two of my coworkers, and neither of them knew this about each other, are super big into aquariums. Like, One of them has a 130-gallon aquarium, and the other one had a 2-ton aquarium. He doesn't anymore, but he used to. The older guy. Yeah, this 2-ton aquarium, he was telling us when he decided to get out of it, it took him 6 to 8 months, he said, to sell all of his, 500 fish and coral and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, that's a part-time job. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
What did he have in his 2-ton aquarium?
Oh, a lot.
A mermaid?
Yes, lots of stuff. And it's only 2-ton because of the weight of water. So it's
I guess.
Volumetric weight, not whatever else you'd call it. But it was hexagon with 36-inch wide panels all the way around. So, whatever that is. And I think it was probably 4 or 5 feet tall. It was crazy. He had a ton of coral, clownfish, other types of fish. I don't know, all the fish. He had all the fish in there, except for piranhas, barracudas, because those will eat the other fish.
Sharks, whales. He had a whale.
Yeah, he had a whale. Just the thing was just for one whale. That's it.
And all the whale could do is just move.
Rotate
like an inch at a time.
Or it would roll over. That's what it would do. You should have got a chull. Just some chulls just floating around in there.
Hell yeah.
I actually don't know if chulls can float or if they drowned, because they're like the mules of Roshar.
Yeah, chulls out for Roshar. Hashtag.
Yes. Chulls out for Harambe.
Too soon.
What did I say at the end of the last episode? Bumping chulls?
Bumping chulls.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, let's remind people what we're reading. It's Words in Radiance. The narrative style here is your typical multi-POV.
It's third-person limited. The limitation comes from, or we see the limitation most when we notice that characters don't have all the information, and we don't as readers either. So, there's so many questions and mysteries that we have, even though we see a lot. I think that's one of the things that makes it unique is we see a lot of what's going on, but we don't see everything that's going on. We don't know what the Parshendi are doing in the midst of this stuff that's going on with Shallan as she's traveling across the plains. We have some idea of it. We don't know what the assassin in white is up to necessarily in the midst of us hearing from Dalinar having another vision. So, we don't have true omnipotence.
Enlighten me and the audience. What would be the distinctives applied to this book between limited and omnipotent third person? What would make this book a third person omnipotent?
That's a good question. And I actually had to pause for a second to look that up because I had my thoughts on it and I get confirmation as I've looked it up. Basically, it's what I said a minute ago. It's what we know as the readers, where we're limited to each character that we read from and what that character knows, their thoughts, emotions, perspective. Third person omniscient would be where the narrator of the book ends up giving us more information than the character has, which we don't get. From Kaladin's perspective, we experience his thoughts and doubts and understandings of events, but then we might jump over to Shallan and we get only her thoughts and interpretations of events. We as the reader get to put a little bit of that together, but we don't get the external, and what they didn't know was coming was this. That doesn't happen, which is what makes us have a third-person limited perspective and narration style rather than third-person omniscient.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Great question, though. And if you guys have any questions while we're reading this book, feel free to drop them in the comments. and let us know.
What was the next thing you wanted to talk about?
It's row 7, 8, and 9. Framework elements, what makes it unique.
Well, your second question was what makes this unique. I think that question is more broad. It's not limited to this book, because this book is not more unique than any of the other books in this series. But the immense world building, the magic systems, the depth of which we get each individual character's backstory, even though it's in parts and strewn throughout the books, not just in one book, and the insights we're given to how they grow, what they're going through, went through, and are going to go through in the limited knowledge that we get in each specific book. I think that's what makes it unique. I don't think it's Brandon Sanderson who created this type of writing and is the only one who does it.
Right.
But the way he does it, it's what makes it stand out. It is robust. There's a lot of attention put by the writer into each of the elements I just mentioned. So for me, that's what makes Stormlight Archives unique.
To build on that, I'd say that I haven't read a book in a while that feels like it has good foreshadowing and long-term payoff. Barring some of the stuff we've read, and meaning, well, it wasn't really modern, but like Stephen King. Stephen King does a good job at that, I think. But I haven't read a lot of other modern books where it's like, oh, this was planted in chapter 2 of book 1, and now it's book 3, chapter 4, and we're getting a payoff on this finally, right? Like, I haven't seen that in a lot of other books that I've read.
Yeah, and even Stephen King, it happens in a few books. It happens a little bit in Jerusalem's Lot. It happens in It in different and sundry ways. His other books, I'm not sure if it's that pronounced. But yes, you are correct. In modern literature, Sanderson stands out as king, pun intended or not intended, of foreshadowing.
It feels like a lost art, honestly, because I feel like when we were growing up, there was more books that were like, oh, this is foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily a long-term payoff, but it was a payoff later in the book itself. Anyway, I think that he just does that really well.
Yeah. What King does really well in the universe he's created is he'll drop in allusions or connections or even characters from other books into the book you're reading currently. So if you are a King reader and you read more than just a few scattered novels or short stories, you will find characters reappearing. You will find themes reappearing or allusions to worlds reappearing. Like his Dark Tower series, for example, you'll find allusions to them throughout his books and even some of his short stories. For example, there's a connection to the Dark Tower series. The men who come to reprimand Wesley for what he did in they're from the Dark Tower series.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have short stories that refer back to Cujo, which is a book about a dog. We have Christine, which is a demon-possessed or a supernatural car that shows up in It. And so King is a master of that. And that's what makes his universe fun, because it's much more disjointed than Sanderson's worlds. Mm-hmm. But there's enough connections where you're like, oh, all of King's stories happen on the same planet. Well, obviously it's Earth, but they happen in the same universe that he's created, is what I'm saying. So King gets an A+ for that. But you are absolutely right. Sanderson's foreshadowing is one of the best that I've read. And I'm not a voracious reader, not as voracious as I used to be as a kid, but I read enough to say this with confidence.
Yeah. Well, let's dive back into the world of Roshar and discuss these other 3 interludes and the chapter sections we have for today.
Let's do it. So we discussed Interlude 2 last week with Yim. Let's jump back to the first interlude, and it's the point of view of Eshonai, the Parshendi leader. And as they return to their home plateau after successfully harvesting a gem heart that was brought back by Devi, another Parshendi, and she's allowed to carry it as a reward for spotting the Crystallis, she wonders where Dalinar is, that she means Eshonai, and feels the need to speak with him, but she can't join battle since her leg is still injured where Kaladin stabbed her during the Battle of the Tower. So she's meandering around the ancient ruins on the plateau by the name of Nark, also meaning exile, where her people came to escape her gods. And this is something that I'm very interested in because it ties into the assassination of the king. It ties into a lot of things. The return of these gods is something the Parshendi are avoiding at all cost, to the point that they're breaking the treaty. As she enters the Hall of Art in an effort to rediscover a new form of making art, this is an incremental step towards discovering more useful forms, right? So they have different forms. The mute form, the dancing form, the lovemaking form. I'm paraphrasing the actual forms, but
You're paraphrasing, but it's fine.
but
I
that's
think
what it is,
anyone
right?
anyone following along would understand that there's work form and dull form and whatever.
Yeah,
So keep going.
right. But Varanus, or Varanus, one of her tenants, at the same time, is unsuccessful in trying to attract the creation Spren. And this is one of his attempts at painting, right? Eshonai now contemplates the 6 current forms and laments the loss of the hundreds of other old songs that are part of her people's heritage, thinking about how many of her people die off before having the chance to become more versatile. Again, kind of paraphrasing what she's thinking. She leaves the hall and encounters 3 mate forms. Those are the lovemaking forms. The way I understand it is, would they go into this form to mate and create more Parshendi?
Yeah. Basically, the way that the Parshendi work is they are a focused people, and I'm going to just like spell out conjectures from everything that I know. Conjectures isn't the right word, but stuff that I know. Where, to your point, the mate form is when they're looking to multiply, they're looking for a life mate, and that's the focus of that form. Dull form, or like worker form, is when they're slaves over with the Alethi and things like that. And they gave up their forms because their previous gods betrayed them, in their opinion. And Eshonai is voicing that they should go back and retrieve their forms of power, as they're referenced, and bring back the old gods, to which the present generation is vehemently against, deeply against, because of the big issues that happened from when they had power forms and then when they were betrayed by their gods. So it's all part of the world building, these interludes, getting one-off perspectives of things that are going on, and it all ties together, not necessarily in this book, but like as you keep going and unraveling the mystery of the Cosmere. Eshonai is supposed to get permission from the 5, the council, to unlock this form of power, but she decides to push forward to find Stormform, regardless of her sister's concern, Venli.
Yeah, so her sister, after all these events happen, she returns home and finds her sister Venli, tells her the plateau run and that Dalinar was not present on the Alethi side. Eshonai says that she wants to talk to Dalinar and pursue peace, but Venli thinks that he wouldn't accept and says that she discovered Stormform. Eshonai exclaims that this would cause their gods to return. And now we're back to their apprehension, like vehement apprehension about this. But Venli says that this is a moot point since the Alethi now have surge binders. Though Eshonai isn't sure about this, they go back and forth. Then we have Demid who comes in, and Venli's former mate. That's who Demid is. And he agrees that they should risk using Stormform to protect their people from being wiped out. Because again, they don't trust Dalinar. Venli says she wants to raise the issue with the 5, and Eshonai says she will consider supporting it. And this is where the interlude ends. We get a little glimpse into what will happen in the future, because, spoiler alert, they do discover Stormform. Venli is not just making it up or mistaken, and they embrace it. They take on Stormform in this book.
Yeah. Have you ever had a time where you knew something or speculated something that ended up being true, and the people around you or your community just didn't believe you? Kind of like here with Venli?
I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to think of something that stands out as noteworthy, and nothing's coming to mind. But yeah, there's been times where I said, hey, this smells funny. I don't think this should be the road we go down. I don't think we should be taking this course. We should be taking another course. And it turns out that I was right. That's happened numerous times. It just, as I'm going through my memory banks, I can't think of anything that I can, extrapolate on here in the podcast. Like, this happened, then this happened, and
Right,
it was
right.
with this person. But
Fair enough.
this happens with many people. This is a common occurrence in human experience, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
What about you? Can you share an experience?
Well, sometimes, and if you're a longtime listener, you'll just laugh. Sometimes I ask questions I don't have answers to, although that should be how all of us ask questions. But on the flip side, sometimes I ask questions that I do have answers to, specifically about Stormlight. In this case, though, relating Stormlight to my life, it's kind of like you said. I have the fog of like, I know this has happened a dozen times to me. It's happened, I think, primarily in my life in the last 20 years. It's probably been mostly at work where I'm like, hey, we shouldn't do this because of whatever. And then, the powers that be are like, no, we're going to do this anyway. And then it happens, and then you get blamed for it, and you're like, yeah, I literally said this was going to happen. This is nonsense.
Okay, well, I have an example. Also at work, but it's a positive example. Like yours is a negative example, right? But mine's a positive. Where people
Happy
were
Saturday.
like,
it's a negative day.
yeah, where people were like, nah, I don't think this is going to work. I'm like, no, this is a gamble, but this is a fair gamble, meaning we're not going to lose that much if it doesn't work. But if it does, it's going to be pretty freaking cool.
Good payoff, yeah.
It's going to be a good payoff, good ROI. And it is a video product that I was working on. And I wanted young people under 25 reflecting on what the older generation has accomplished and what happened for the older generation, those events, how it spurred on the younger generation to do what they've done. And people were like, okay, that's I guess so. Okay, fine. You're in charge. So, you'll eat it if it falls apart. And not only did it work really well. Where now they want to recreate what I did there. They want to recreate it in a different campaign.
Jealous.
Yeah.
Tell me how to get people to listen to me like that, and I'll give you a nice bottle of whiskey. Plot twist. You'll
talk with confidence, absolute surety. No, this is going to work, and that's it. That's a very simplistic answer.
I feel like I already do that, but
there's more to
enough.
it. There's definitely more to it, but
speak with an accent.
Speak with an accent. Yeah, just put on your accent. You must do this, or else it'll be bad for you.
Perfect. You should start doing VOs for the Stormlight archives.
In the bad Russian accent I just did. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Russians would love you.
Yes.
Anywho, next interlude we got, and this one is a fun story to follow. There's actually a novella about this character, Rysn, and she's the apprentice of a merchant on one of her travels to the Reshi Isles, and she's struggling to understand the Reshi people, their culture, and these massive great shells that they have. She offers the king of the Reshi Isles a priceless gem heart as a gift, but only in exchange for genuine respect and not a business trade. But Rysn begins to appreciate, at the end of this chapter, Rysn begins to appreciate different worldviews that are not all value of wealth over relationships. So, what do you think about, or do you have anything else on this chapter, this interlude?
No, I also liked it. I thought it was a fun break, although it's really not, but it's different than anything else I read so far.
Changes it up, right?
It changes it up. In the end, well, let me back up for a second. So Rysn is kind of setting up Vistim to go and talk to this king, who turns out to be a queen. And he's kind of setting her up to teach her a lesson. It's not like a bad setup. But she goes balls to the wall trying to prove herself and gets paralyzed. Rysn's now worrying that Vistim is dying. And that's where I think some of his worldview shifts, right? And at the end, Rysn wakes up in the hut on the island where she's at. Her legs are paralyzed. She sees Vistim, a Reshi healer, and Talak around her. They scold her for her stupidity, but then Rysn says, no, it is my boldness. And she insists that they allow her to finish the trade. So here's where Rysn realizes that it was all a test, and that Vistim, I think I messed it up in the previous sentences, but Rysn is the the apprentice and Vistum is the mentor. And she realizes that it's all a test that he had set up for her to trade and feels foolish. And Vistum reveals that the trade was for a Larkin corpse. You can tell us what that is in a second here. But that Rysn has been granted a live Larkin by the island itself. So the island is also alive. And then we end really quickly and abruptly. Vistum and Rysn will stay on the island while Rysn's legs heal. So she's not permanently paralyzed is what we get.
Mhm.
But what's a Larkin corpse?
It's like a dragon is too big of a term because it's not a dragon. Its name is Chiri Chiri, or its name will be Chiri Chiri. It's like a small flying creature with a carapace on it. Again, not a dragon. It's an extinct species. And this is one of those like world building things where it's like, oh, there's extinct species on this planet. Oh, okay. Not only do we have different cultures with different ecosystems, but we have extinct creatures as well. But yes, the island has granted Rysn a Larkin, and Chiri Chiri is its name. We get to see a whole cove of Larkin, basically, if I'm remembering the novella correctly, following Rysn around in her novella called, it's not Edge Dancer, what's the other one? Dawn Shard. Is it Dawn Shard? Dawn Breaker? Dawn something? Anyway, in her novella, she goes to investigate a place and happens upon more of Chiri Chiri's cousins, I guess I'll call them, because I don't think they're exactly the same. From what we understand, Chiri Chiri is only one of 3 living Larkin left alive. So I think they're cousins. But yeah, Rysn gets to have more of a storyline in future books, as well as Chiri Chiri, and actually a very notable role at some point in the distant, not so distant future, depending on how far you've read ahead.
So this brings us to our last interlude called The Last Legion. We're back with Eshonai, and she's with Thud and Billa, and they examine a gemstone with a captured storm spren inside it, and this is what Venli believes will allow them to rediscover Stormform. Billa thinks that anything that will help in the war against the Alethi is worth it, but Eshonai still worries about provoking the old gods. As they depart, Eshonai decides to go visit her mother. On her way, she sees a group of Parshendi that have chosen Dullform, the form of most of the Parshmen. And here Eshonai begins to question them on the cause of their transformation, and they respond they do it so the Alethi will not kill them when they come. The sentiment in the Parshendi camp is the Alethi will come no matter what we do, and it's better to be a slave than to be dead. Eshonai is concerned by this response, but understands the Parshendi are free to choose their own forms. And so after she visits with her mom, she leaves her mother's house to attend the meeting with the 5, the council, as you say, regarding Venel's plan to rediscover Stormform. Eshonai is hesitant. She expresses concerns regarding the old gods, but eventually the council convinces her, and she agrees to the plan under the condition that she be the first one to try assuming Stormform. And we're left with Venli studying the knowledge of the forms, kind of coming to an understanding that the forms are too valuable to risk undergoing the transformation by herself, right?
Yeah, sort of. They are too valuable, which is why she wants to bring them back. However, this question of like their lost gods, like what do you think that's referring to? What do you think that means?
Well, that's the mystery, right? That's the thing that is
right, exactly. Yeah,
living rent-free in my head, because they killed a king. They shot any chances at peace 6 years ago when they realized, oh my gosh, the Alethi are going to bring back the old gods. And Stormfather's involved in it because Dalinar is seeing these visions. His brother saw some visions or found out some knowledge and thought that bringing these gods back would be the path to peace and prosperity. And the Parshendi was like, oh gosh, no, no, that's not going to happen. We can never let that happen. So that leads them to kill him. And here, it seems that they're doing it anyway in order to avoid destruction at Alethi hands.
So I will say that he wanted to bring back the old gods, but for himself, not for them. And so that is one distinction that we'll learn later, just as an FYI.
An Oathbringer?
Yeah, Oathbringer or Rhythm of War, one of those two.
Okay.
Because it's a prologue. It's one of the prologues.
Right, because what I gathered from Oathbringer's prologue, which I read quickly after I finished this book, but then put it down because I was told under pain of death and excommunication.
No. I released you.
Not
I
to
released
read it,
you.
and I must read Mistborn. But
I
that
released you,
prologue...
but I strongly encouraged Mistborn.
Yeah, but that prologue, Oathbringer that is, when he tells her why he's doing it, and maybe we'll find out later that it is just for himself. Maybe I'll find that out. But in that prologue, what I remember from it, it is for the greater good of the world. That's what he believes that he's doing. Well,
he also believes that. So I guess I should clarify. He also believes that.
But those are the 4 interludes. Now we are in part 2.
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions.
Very little answers.
Yeah, that's true. But that's the thing about an epic. And honestly, like, I just finished book 5 in December. We have, man, that book ends where there's even more questions. But the beauty of it is that we have 5 more books. Even though it ends on a cliffhanger, there's murmurings amongst the Cosmerian community of how much the ending, or about the ending. We have 5 more books to learn about what's going on. And because Mistborn and these other books are in the timeline of Cosmere, Brandon is currently writing Ghostbloods, Era 3 Mistborn, which is going to be set in the 1980s, America, roughly. Not specifically America, but like 1980s. The Cosmere itself is moving towards a space age. Man, there's just a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. And we're all just praying that Sanderson can survive long enough to write the whole series. And he's not terribly much older than us. But, you know, anything could happen. So
yeah. Well, do you love books, audience? Do you love this podcast? Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss an episode. So before we go back and catch up with our girl Shallan, let's do a little side quest. You're offered a Shardblade, Jonathan. What do you trade for it?
Oh my gosh. Well, as we learned at the end of Way of Kings, Shardblades are priceless, basically, which is why everyone kills for them. We know that Kaladin refused a Shardblade for moral reasons. Man, I would like one. I'd probably use it to cut vegetables or something silly and obscure like that so people didn't know. But what would I trade for it? Man, I don't own a lot of great things. I would trade my Deepest, Darkest Secret for it.
Ooh, what is that?
Are you giving me a Shardblade?
I have 2, so I could give you a Shardblade.
I need to see it first.
Want me to whip out my Shardblade?
No. That's not that kind of podcast. This isn't OnlyFans or only Cosmerians.
Only shards.
And we've hit that point.
It's
all right.
Shard Hub.
Get bent.
That's actually the name of my Shardblade.
I'm sure it is. What would you trade for a Shardblade, Slava? Your dogs? Your wife?
One of the dogs, maybe. I'll keep my wife. All the stupid, silly joke that came in my head as you were talking is like, I have this 50-inch gaming screen, which I don't game on. I just use it for work and podcasts because I can see 5 different things on it at once.
Super jealous. If anyone in the audience wants to send me one like Slava's, I will receive it graciously.
I'd probably trade that. I know it's kind of silly, but if I'm going to give you a quasi-serious answer, something that is worth a Shardblade.
Yeah, it's got to be priceless, whatever your thing you're trading is.
Well, I wouldn't trade my wife.
Trade your salvation. Do it.
No, I wouldn't do that either. What would I do for a 3rd Shardblade, man? It's a hard question.
Absolute dingus here.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's difficult to say. I'm trying to be, like I said, I'm trying to be quasi-serious here to answer it, but I don't own a lot. Maybe my library. I have 1,000 books in my library. A lot of them like older first source, books on archaeology. I have a crap ton of theology books. I have a few Stephen King books, first editions. Well, I have one Stephen King book that's a first edition. Maybe that, if it's valuable in this world where there's Stephen King books and Shardblades.
Fair enough. I just had a thought, though. You know how there's people who go after cougars to try to get their money? Like young folks who go after cougars?
Yeah.
if we were on Roshar, you could theoretically do the same thing. Just like marry one of these folks and then poison them.
Or wait for them to die. You don't need to poison them, you psychopath.
I mean, how quickly do you want your shard blade?
Well, wouldn't your cougar wife let you borrow her Shardblade?
That's probably true.
You need to go to murder all the time.
I'm just channeling Zeph Son Villano
There you go.
for his all his machinations, to use one of your words again.
You touched on something that I want to explore just for a few seconds here, or a minute, on this side quest. Kaladin refuses one of these things for moral reasons. And you kind of see that sprinkled throughout other interactions with Shardblades. Like, some people see them as a necessary evil. You see some people embrace them for their power and the fact that they're priceless. That's a tempting part of having a Shardblade, owning something that is so powerful and priceless. And then you see others also like squeamish around them, but using them nonetheless, which is kind of the same thing maybe as the second part. In your expert opinion, meaning you're more of an expert than I am, what is so immoral about them for people like Kaladin?
Well, I don't remember which chapter this happens in, but Shardblades killed all of his friends. So,
okay, but that's silly. That's like saying I was robbed once, therefore guns are bad. Like, a Shardblade or a gun is a tool, and they can both be used.
Kaladin doesn't think like that, though.
Well, then Kaladin is dumb.
That's not out of the realm of possibilities.
On
honestly.
this issue.
Yeah.
Stupid.
No, that's not out of. Yeah, he's not out of the realm of possibility, because he, like, okay, all his friends died from Shardblade when they didn't have to. The person who did that was a Bright Eyes, a Bright Lord. So getting a Shardblade turns you into a Bright Lord, and that's why he's doing it for moral reasons. He doesn't want to become a Light Eyes.
Yeah, I understand his perspective. I'm not like confused.
You just think he's an idiot.
I just think he's wrong, because although not analogous, but I was mugged once. Am I supposed to now hate weapons and Mexican people just because it happened to be a Mexican guy who mugged me? No, I know, audience, and Jonathan, this is not analogous. I understand him not liking Light Eyes for what he has suffered at the hands of certain Light Eyes.
Yep.
But I don't think that his...
But he's a proud person.
I don't think it's rational.
Character. No. Oh, no, I don't think anybody could argue that. Well, they probably could, but I don't think that there's a lot of ground to stand on. Yeah, I don't think it's rational by any means, but it doesn't mean that that's not. And that's kind of like the beauty of the characters here, right? Like, we all have been irrational at some point, and we've all known a friend who's irrational, and we've all been the friend who's irrational.
Sure.
This just happens to be his shard point, if you will, his sticking point. So I'm not saying it's right, because I'm with you. It's like, yeah, there are things that have happened to me that at the end of the day, like, you could form an opinion that this tool is wrong, but it's like, it's a tool, so use it accordingly, right? Like, money's a tool. I regularly meet young folks who are like, money's evil, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but if you had $1 million, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah, and you would use it to better your family, put investments, buy the shit you like a 55-inch gaming screen.
If only I was as rich as Slava.
I got it on sale.
If only I got it on sale like Slava and had the money to get it on sale.
Anyway, I don't want to make this like a sticking point, because Kaladin's fine. I like him as a character.
The side quest has changed to a moral quest for Shardblades, specifically around Kaladin's moronic decisions about not taking one.
Even if he is burdened by his fate, what he has to do with the knowledge he has, a Shardblade would help him. Having the power, political power of being a Light Eyes would have.
Yes.
So
all of the yes.
And he's turning into the same type of Light Eyes that despises Dark Eyes. He is now a Dark Eyes that despises Light Eyes. And I get the power dynamic. I really do, audience. I don't need to be educated on that. I understand what he must be feeling as a minority, or even as just an oppressed person in this world. I'm not taking that away from him. But a rational person who is facing the journey that Kaladin is facing, and I get it, also parentheses, I get it that he's early on in his journey, greater good would be done by him taking a Shardblade and using his newfound connections and power to do good for other Dark Eyes, even to correct the evils and the mistakes that the Light Eyes have done, to be a voice of reason in their circles now.
Yes. I
Anyway,
agree with you.
Waxing
with you.
philosophical is over for me.
I can't wait till we read Mistborn, because Mistborn Era 2 in particular, because one of the main characters' names is Wax. Wax and Wayne.
Wax and Wayne.
Yeah, so Western. It's a lot of fun.
Well, let's go back to our girl Shallan, chapter 13. She is traveling to the Shattered Plains
Trying to.
on one of Tuvlok's wagons. And for those who don't know, Tuvlok is the same slave trader that brought Kaladin to the Shattered Plains. And she's sitting next to Bluth, one of the stoic mercenaries hired by the slave trader who drives the wagon. And she's processing a lot of stuff here, right? So she's distracting herself by her surroundings. The flora of the southern Frostlands are very new to her. They're unfamiliar. What she's thinking, this is what I think is interesting for me. She's reflecting on the Voidbringers and pattern. Here confirms their reality. She wonders who was behind the attack on her and Jasnah. And she feels uncertain about her ability to succeed at what she must do.
As she should. She's a backwater princess. She's not actually princess, but backwater babe with a father who, didn't let her do anything because she was delicate or whatever. So, understanding to question that. I get it.
But there is a fervor in her. There is a dedication. She's doing it. She's telling Pattern they must complete Jasnah's mission, finding Urithuru and warning the Alethi of the Voidbringer's return. She knows that there's something she must do for herself, for Jasnah, for sentiment's sake, for honor's sake. The right thing to do is to go through this. But she is still battling through some insecurities and worry and everything that a normal person would. And here is why I think I am more attached to her than Kaladin. Because Kaladin has similar issues that he's battling. Similar in the sense that there is a reluctance, and it's not a reluctance out of fear or necessarily an unwillingness to do it. They both know that they have to do something. But the way I read these characters is, for me, Shallan is going through these things, but we quickly see her going, okay, I know this is what I need to do. We get some insight into why she's afraid, why she's uncertain, and she does it anyway. And then she goes, oh, okay, hey, I did it. Okay, and next step, and next step, and next step.
Yeah.
Her reflex here seems to be working better than Kaladin's. Kaladin's kind of shrinks into himself when these things happen. A lot of times he takes a few steps back and doesn't really make up for the steps forward until much further in the book, where Shallan, she's faced with something. She will have uncertainty, she will have fear, but she goes, I got to do this. Boom, she does it and then moves on. And we see this on the road to the Shattered Plains. We see this play out with Tin. And then even when she gets to the Shattered Plains, when she meets the Ghostbloods, when she meets other folks, when she is in the court with Lethe and she speaks up and says, hey, I know something about what's going on, me and Jasnah. Jasnah and I did this, and this is what Jasnah told me. So despite feeling constrained by her surroundings, despite feeling uncertain because of her past, she kind of barrels through some of these things despite those things. That's why I find her so much more attractive as a calendar. As a character.
As a calendar, yes. Yes. February, I think, is her calendar month.
Yep.
Yes. Lady February.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between characters, right? Like,
well, sure.
Kaladin 100% takes steps back and is more brooding, which is what gives us that contrast with Syl being fun and whatever. And then Shallan, like, having seen all the terrible things she's done, develops a multiple personality issue because she just keeps barreling through.
That's so fun.
You heard it here first, folks. Slava thinks multiple personality is fun. So if you've got multiple personalities, leave them all in the comments.
Maybe I'm codependent. I just like girls with multiple personalities and daddy issues.
So you can have your pick every day of the week. Should I reach out to your wife? She doing okay?
She's doing just fine. She has one personality, and we've been married.
Which one? Yeah, which one?
Happily for 17 years, so.
Maybe the second one's developing still.
I haven't given her enough trauma.
Should work on that. I thought your dogs did that.
Oh, those freaking dogs, man. They're like little Spren.
Yes.
So My girl dog would be Syl, and my boy dog would be Pattern.
Nice.
They very much have those type of personalities.
Your boy dog is speaking to you in numbers?
Yes, it's very literal. And my girl dog is just bubbly and jumping around and going nuts all the time.
Yes. Often during the episodes.
Often during the episodes.
That's true. But yeah, Shallan has to do a lot of difficult things right now. First, she's just trying to survive. And this is the difference. And I brought this up during the last book we read, Apocalypse Z, where I was like, I don't know what the character wants. And you're like, they want to survive. And I was like, yeah, but there needs to be more than that. This is a clear example of, we know that Shallan wants to survive. She could be taken prisoner, terrible things could be done to her, but she is playing a role right now to survive. But we know her whole goal is not survival. Her whole goal is get to the Shattered Plains. And more than that, we see a bigger role that she's got where she wants to complete Yasna's work. And that's the difference. That was the point I was making in the last book is like, yes, I understand the characters want to survive. That's a given. But they need to want something more than that. They need to have a bigger vision. It doesn't even need to play out where they win. Just that, like, that is the driving force, which then we as the audience can connect with, like, oh yeah, of course she needs to finish this work. Like, who would assassinate someone with such prowess and intelligence unless there was something bigger going on? Oh my gosh, like, we need to know what's going on. That's clear. It's super clear because, like, Yasna's dead. And Shallan needs to survive long enough to try to complete this work. But even more so, she's trying to save her family. So she's got competing priorities that she needs to make sure happen. Was the point I was trying to bring. Like, the character, I guess putting it more simply, the character in the last book was flat because he didn't have a bigger goal.
I agree with you completely. My only pushback on that is this is an epic, multi-series epic, multi-volume epic. Apocalypse Z and books like it are usually standalones. Well, Apocalypse Z is a trilogy, actually. But taken by itself and taken similar books, which are just standalone books by itself, there's either the author's ability or inability to do this, or the time constraints, or the space constraints, and good, bad, or indifferent. Sometimes all the character wants to do is survive. That could be the choice of the author or just incidental to the other things that I just mentioned, because of the other things I just mentioned. I agree with you that that leaves the reader wanting more or maybe unimpressed or disappointed, but the overview of the book by itself, for me, is like, yeah, they just want to survive. This guy's just a guy in Spain not wanting to get eaten by zombies.
What a weeb.
It might be semantics, or it might be even me being pedantic, but the simple fact for me is those books are just not, I'll grant you, they're not the same caliber as these, but also I don't think they're even trying to be these books. Here's a story about a guy surviving a thing. At the end of the day, I agree with you. It's not the best thing, but only compared to here. If you read them in isolation, that'd be, all right, it's an okay book, but we could have known more about the character's desires outside of him running away from zombies. Sure, I agree.
Profound.
Thank you. Yeah, I try.
So, do you think that you could pull off something like Shallan here? Like, you're in a different land, you don't necessarily speak the same dialect, people know that you come from probably money, and you have to survive to meet your betrothed on the Shattered Plains?
As I look back on my life, the situations I was in where against all odds I just had to do something to survive, I think I can do it. And that's why these characters like Ciri, Shallan are so attractive to me, because I see myself in them. With Ciri specifically, I said this 100 times when we've covered Sanderson, the way she deals with situations is the way I deal with situations. Humor and sarcasm, almost apathy at times, which kind of plays into her using humor and sarcasm. And with Shallan, despite internal struggles, despite certain consequences of what has happened to me that shaped me for good or bad, at times plowing through a situation, barreling through things, just taking it one step at a time or making a giant leap into something, kind of describes my life. So yeah, I think I could do it.
Nice. Be sure to drop us a rating and help us spread the word if you're enjoying today's side quest.
Well, in the next chapter, we are met with Adolin Kholin as he prepares for his first duel under Dalinar's plan for Adolin to duel with a bunch of Light Eyes to get their Shardblades. He leaves the preparation room and walks to the staging room where Renarin and Navani are waiting to equip his shard plate. Navani burns a prayer or a glyph for safety and glory. Adolin inquires about Yasna, and Navani replies that her daughter has likely gone missing due to a change of plans. So they don't know that Yasna is dead, but not really dead, around this time.
Right. This is one of those third-person limited moments.
Yeah. Renarin verifies that Adolin finished his lucky pre-duel rituals, and Navani scoffs at their superstitions. I thought that was kind of funny. But Adolin tells Renarin that he has suspicions about Kaladin. And then he enters the arena to duel Salanor. The large crowd is there. This is his first formal duel of the Sharded Plains because Dalinar didn't let him duel for a while. I think it's been like a year since he's actually done it. So it's not the very first one, but it's a first one in a long time. Adolin uses wind stance, but thinks of his father's words and then switches to Iron Stance, the name of the chapter, and aggressively battles and defeats his opponent into submission, winning despite protests from the judges. Salanor obviously protests that Adolin cheated, and Adolin threatens to choke him until he surrenders his Shardblade, which Salanor does because nobody likes to get choked. And then Adolin is proclaimed the official winner. And so begins the first in many such victories for Adolin as he collects Shardblades.
Yeah, I like this part of this subplot where Adolin has been released to do something that he's very good at and gives him the opportunity to have a little fun. But this is kind of also a first starting point of the difference between his father and him. As the books develop, we'll see that Adolin and his father have differences of opinion, we'll call it differences of opinion.
Here's a silly question that popped into my head, and it was spurred on by just a little comment you made. Differences between father and son. Does Dalinar make it to book 5?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a weird question to ask.
No, it just seems that it could be a setup for us losing Dalinar, then Adolin having to do great things in his father's stead, follow his footsteps.
No. Yeah, he definitely makes it to book 5. It's more nuanced than that with what Sanderson does. A lot of that starts off, like you'll see the groundwork for it happen in Oathbringer by the end of Oathbringer for the differences. That's all I'll say about that. But I really like the subplot, like I said a minute ago, of this duel thing. Do you think that Adolin, when you were first reading it, let me say that because you did finish reading it before we started recording this. When you read this, did you think that Adolin was going to have like all these winning duels and then something else was going to happen? Or what were your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. When I read this particular chapter for the first time, I kind of had a positive outlook on it, thinking, you know what? I think Sanderson is going to give Adolin a bunch of wins. He might lose one. Maybe there'll be a cliffhanger here and there where we don't know exactly what's going on, and we'll have to find out in the next book. I actually thought this is where Sanderson is going to give the Colin family some wins, where Adolin will defeat his opponents.
And were you happy with the outcomes that we'll discuss in future chapters?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. This plot line leads to a crescendo at some point that I absolutely gets me every time I read it. So can't wait to get there again.
Gets you in a good way, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a good way. There's just and I think I mentioned this at Way of Kings, the end of Way of Kings where they're on the Shattered Plains and they have to make this decision. Are they going to do the honorable thing or are they not going to do the honorable thing? And they do the honorable thing. They save Adolin and Dalinar. Then Dalinar gives up his Shardblade for all the bridgemen. It's moments like that, both those two moments, I just lose it, man. I just start crying. It's so beautiful. It's this moment of honor and recognition and loyalty and prejudices for the moment get put aside because there's a greater issue at hand, something more important that needs to happen. There's a couple moments like that in this book as well. One of them is through this plot line as we keep going. So if they haven't gotten there yet, I want to give them the opportunity to experience it, but I will be sure to mention it when it comes up.
And we quickly switch back to Shallan in chapter 15, A Hand with the Tower. This chapter is fairly short. It just gives us a further view, but a quick view into Shallan's travels with Tlaloc. Tavok's wearing different shoes than when they first met, but he lies that he only has one pair. Obviously, he's a slave trader and a bit of a sleazeball. Shallan is now asking Pattern to do some work on her behalf, specifically to spy on a conversation between Tavok and Tag. Pattern records and replays the chat for Shallan in secret, revealing that Tavok intends to protect Shallan, but also profit from her rescue to escape a debt. And here we see Shallan, despite having insecurities and fears, plowing through, is the term I used a few times now, using what she sees in front of her, processing it, and moving forward with the greater goal in mind. She uses this information to keep Tavok off balance and to gain the upper hand in their dealings. So I thought that was great. Each time Shallan does this on her travels to the Shattered Plains, with the deserters, with Tin, I'm just like, you go, girl. This is great. I love the character growth here in her courage. I like the character growth in her courage. And as she gets up to leave, Tavok flinches away from her. So there's not only is she keeping him off balance, he's noticing that there's something more to this girl than what he initially thought. It's not just a girl from some podunk part of the world. He notices some Stormlight coming off of her, but he might not know it's Stormlight, whatever it is. And she hopes that Tavok will chalk this up to a trick of the eye or something. So not only is he confused because she keeps him off balance, what she knows about what he thinks he's doing in secret, he also notices this thing about her, which probably gives him some pause as to who is this girl from the backwoods or the backcountry. She keeps her cool and hopes that he'll think whatever he saw is just a trick of the eye.
Yeah, and then when she gets back to her wagon, she ends up having her infected feet have lessened because she's been walking around with no shoes. Tavokov, to your point, definitely a sleazeball. I like how he gets voiced in the audiobook. Brightness? It's fun. I like the little sleazy accent. Reminds me of some of the, I don't know, kids TV shows where you have the guy coming up. Let me interest you in some nice wares. Come on, near me. Take a look.
He's a French sleazeball.
French, Moroccan, take your pick. I just see somebody, some sort of merchant in a bazaar trying to cajole you into their booth so that you buy whatever trinket they're trying to sell. An old lamp that when you rub it, supposedly it's magic, but hasn't worked for them.
Yeah, and we end this chapter on a bit of a cliffhanger. Bluth returns to the camp, all in a panic, putting out campfires, and tells them that he spotted a caravan of army deserters. And army deserters in this world have been known to turn to banditry. So they quickly pack up their wagons and travel east to escape notice. And then Bluth gives Shallan some information. That information is that they might not be able to bribe their way past the bandits, because that's not what the bandits are all about. They don't care. They are desperate, and they'll probably kill and rob them instead.
Yeah, I forgot about a main point that I wanted to bring up, though, because you mentioned Tavokov seeing Shallan's Stormlight coming off of her. It's been thousands of years, and no one's had these powers, so it's definitely a question that people have, that they don't know what's going on. They don't necessarily trust their eyes just yet because it's not been normalized. Definitely in book 3, it'll be normalized, and 4 and 5. But the people of the world, Roshar, haven't yet come to terms with, the Knights Radiant returning. It's a new conundrum, if you will, a new experience, per se.
Well, do you love books, audience? Do you love this podcast? Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss an episode.
All right, before we keep going, let's do another side quest. Who would you follow in the world of Roshar? Let's say you had the opportunity to go between camps because you were just traveling to the Shattered Plains and you have enough knowledge, and it doesn't even need to be the Shattered Plains necessarily. It's just somewhere on Roshar. Who would you join? Would you join Dalinar, Sadeas, Taravangian, Bridge 4, Ghostbloods, or try to get in with the crew that Taravangian has and look at the diagram?
Good question. Very interesting question. Definitely not Sadeas. Sadeas.
You don't trust him? Why not?
Not really.
Why
I
not?
don't like him. Don't like him from the first book. Dalinar seems like the obvious answer, so really don't want to just off the bat say him, although probably be better to be in his camp. Taravangian, you mentioned that he's a calculated survivor. That's a good choice, right? If you knew just the basics about each character and you'd be like, well, Dalinar is
Right, yeah.
all about honor and he's going to save the world. And then Sadeas, he's a sleazeball that just happens to have a lot of power. And then all you knew about Taravangian is that. Those 3 items of information, I guess I would say Taravangian, but that's me putting myself in a hypothetical limited.
Well, don't forget about Bridge 4 or the Ghostbloods.
Yeah, Ghostbloods are interesting.
Taravangian has the diagram.
Yeah, I'm not joining Bridge 4. I don't want to be a slave. I'm not that sentimental.
You don't want to go back to the origins of our people?
Been there, done that. See, Bridge 4, why would I join Bridge 4? Like, out of some sentimental reason for, I want to be with Kaladin. He is a guy who has your back. But you have to be a slave. Well, hell, I'll be by myself without anybody having my back, but I'll be a light eyes. Yeah, I'd rather be rich and powerful because I can still be myself when I'm rich and powerful. It's not like that money is going to corrupt me. If we're going to play this hypothetical, right? Like,
Right.
Slava's given the choice, being Slava the way he is right now, him being a lord or him being a slave.
I never said that you'd be a lord. You just get to join their camp.
Well, either way. Okay, fair point. But either way, do I want to be in the camp of slaves or do I want to be in the camp of light eyes? Even if I'm a low stature, the camp of light eyes, they might be dicks to me, but at least I get to eat and not get shot with the Parshendi arrow.
It's interesting to me that you didn't discuss the Ghostbloods at all. Like, that's not even on your radar.
No. We'll get to it.
Oh, all right.
Because I got distracted a little bit. What I was going to say just a few seconds ago is the Ghostbloods, they're intriguing. To be part of a covert underground assassin group, whatever they're doing, whatever their political machinations are, right? They're kind of rogue rebels, if maybe it'll be one way of describing them. They are all political rebels in some sense where they see what they think is the best way for Roshar, and that includes some assassinations, that includes some machinations and espionage. That's very cool and intriguing. So if I believed what they believed, hell yeah, let me join the Ghostbloods and help them in any way I can,
What do the Ghostbloods believe, Slava?
They believe that the king must be assassinated because he's a twerp and a weakling. And then for the glory of Roshar, for the betterment of Roshar, they need somebody else in power.
Okay.
If I was to give you a cursory
Sure. Yeah.
overview.
That's kind of what I was looking for. Interesting. Well, I'll tell you this. At least one person in the Ghostbloods is from a different world.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on that, but I couldn't tell you who right now because, of course, while we're recording, I'll forget the character's name. So, good on me.
Good on you. Yes.
I'm a great podcast co-host.
Yes.
My research.
The best. And you might, I'll tell you this too, you might regret not picking Taravangian.
I didn't say I wasn't picking Taravangian.
I thought you picked already. Oh, never mind then. Make your pick.
Oh, no, I was just giving all the reasons why each one would be good or bad or why I would choose one or the other.
So pick one.
Well, Taravangian, obviously.
Rough choice. All right, guess we'll find out. We should do some horse races. We should do some pick your horse and then you have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Oh, let me be serious, okay? Because I'm being kind of a smartass. So knowing what we know, and putting the constraints that I put on my choice, I am part of this world and I know just a little bit about each camp, and I get to choose. I'm given a choice by some higher power or just regular old circumstances where I get to go.
The Stormfather will direct you accordingly based on your wishes.
Amen and amen. So I'm going to the Shattered Plains in the same caravan that Shallan's going. And if she tells me a little bit about these people and she goes, you can come with me or you can go here or you can go there. Well, let's put that spin on this hypothetical. I think I would choose Taravangian or the Ghostbloods. I would have to know more. I'd probably choose Taravangian and then go, who are these Ghostbloods? Let me go talk to the guy in the back of the bar in the basement who throws red darts at people.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
right.
You now. I know you probably would choose Dalinar, right?
Yeah, no questions.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't. Yeah. there's no questions. I would pick Dalinar every day. Every day. Well, that's not true. Not every day. Maybe not past Dalinar, the Blackthorn himself. Probably wouldn't pick him. And Sadeas, you're just waiting to get stabbed in the back. So there's no... The Ghostbloods, maybe, but I honestly don't think that they have played their hand very well in the first 5 books. I think that they will play them better in the next 5.
Oh, 6 years to learn a lesson from your mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. But I could have been convinced to join the Ghostbloods too, probably. But I don't think I have enough skills that they'd be interested in me, honestly.
You could help with their marketing and recruiting.
Well, the thing is, by joining Dalinar, I would get their attention and they might come to me with an offer.
Yeah.
So
That's what happened with Shallan.
yes.
Kind of. But
Ish. We'll call
ish.
it's
Very
fine.
ish, yeah.
Yeah.
It's more
All right.
tin than anything, but
Yes, it is 10 for may she rest in peace. Which
Rip.
didn't last long. Did you think that was going to last long?
I thought it was going to last a lot longer than it did.
It felt like it the first time I read it. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I think this is going to be like a new, all right, this is what's going on. And then like, boom, she's dead. Like, oh, okay. All right then. Fair enough. Be sure to drop us a rating and help us spread the word if you're enjoying today's side quest. All right, back to chapter 16. Let's keep going here.
Let's do
We
it.
got our boy Kaladin. Give us the rundown. And then also, while you're giving us the rundown, give us the
Swordmaster.
kind of vibes you were getting while you were following Kaladin around. If you still have those notes around.
Vibes and calendar.
Man, are you late for something? This is the second calendar reference. Yes, the calendar, the Rosharan calendar. Actually, you want to get super nerdy on
1173. That's
sure.
the date for this.
Yes, yep. But if you want to get super nerdy, some people have gone through and actually tested what should be the gravitational pull on each planet
Uh-huh.
and like how it compares with Earth. But that's all on the Coppermind and the 17th chart if you want to get super nerdy. Roshar has a deeper gravitational pull than Earth's does.
Oh, that
So when you're
explains a lot.
on it, you it's harder to move if you're not from there, supposedly.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, in chapter 16.
Chapter 16. So Kaladin leads a bodyguard patrol along with Moash and Drehi through the Light Eyes training ground as they scout the area while waiting for Adolin and Renarin. Kaladin converses with an Ardent who explains the Lethe tradition of allowing Light Eyes to train with royal Shardblades so they are ready for battle. Moash asks about Kaladin's feelings towards Amaram, and he says the two of them will get their revenge on the Light Eyes who have wronged them in the past. And I don't know if this is part of that foreshadowing that you were talking about, but I didn't pick it up. And when Moash turns out to be with the Ghostbloods, trying to kill the king, I was 40% of me was surprised. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this I never saw this coming.
So
but
he wasn't with the Ghostbloods, but he was with another organization.
Which one?
what is it? It's called not the Men of Honor, Brothers of Honor or something like that.
Oh yeah. Okay, right.
Anyway, but
So anyway.
a group that was trying to assassinate the king. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole group on Reddit. I don't know if you found it, called Moash.
No, but now I'm going to go find it because Moash indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so Syl here is asking Kaladin what's troubling him. And I really like
And
in
he
the
just broods
subsequent
in response.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. And I like how in subsequent chapters, Syl starts poking Kaladin a little bit more about what he needs to do, about his, fate, if you will, about his duties. She starts kind of poking him and prodding him a little bit more. But that's because she is also advancing in her person. Like she is becoming less of just a kind of flighty little Spren into somebody who is more cognition, more will, more intellect, more emotion. Same way Pattern is going to be going throughout the book too. So Syl is asking Kaladin to tell her what's troubling him. Kaladin says that Dalinar is tainted by his association with Amaram. And Syl warns him not to lie. And here he admits, Dalinar is honorable and is probably deceived by Amaram. So he is able to think rationally. And Syl advises Kaladin to tell Dalinar how Amram really got his Shardblade, but Kaladin doesn't think that that's going to bring about any good. Syl also tells Kaladin that she does not like either Adolin or Renarin. It's implied, heavily implied, because they carry Shardblades. So here is an interesting contrast to Kaladin's dislike of Shardblades. He has moral objections, but Syl seems to, I guess you can call it a moral judgment too, but Syl seems to think that there is something inherently, absolutely to its core, evil about Shardblades. Though Syl says the blades did not used to be abomination, she understands that something was good about them or that they were used for good, but now they are evil. She seems to have more reason to be afraid of them or to despise them or whatever she's actually feeling, and sees someone who appears to be suspicious and goes to investigate. Then Kaladin is speaking with Sahil, an ex-soldier Ardent, who is observing Adolin and Renarin train. Tells Kaladin that he isn't going to harm any of the brothers. Sahil says that 2 Kholins need to be chosen by a master. As he speaks, he is summoned by Adolin to join the other gathered Ardents. Then Kaladin asks if Sahil seems odd to Syl, and she replies that all humans seem odd to her except for Rock. And that's kind of a wink-wink, tongue-in-cheek, because Rock worshippers is a god.
Yes, that's true. And we don't know a ton about the Horn Eaters yet. We are supposedly getting a novella around Rock at some point in the next 6 years. Sanderson is writing Ghostbloods 1, 2, and 3 for Mistborn Era 3, but that is supposedly on the roadmap. In terms of Xyle, does he strike you as familiar?
He does. He does strike me familiar.
How long did it take you to put that together?
I think like 2 interactions.
What gave it away?
His use of word adages and isms, and just some of his inner thoughts, which are like minuscule. Like it's not, I wouldn't even call it an inner thought.
It's very minor.
Yeah. And I was like, hello, Vasher.
Yes, Vasher has found his way onto Roshar from Threnody. We don't know how. We don't know why. Should be fun to see what happens.
That reveal was very satisfying to me because I like Vasher. Vasher's fun.
Mm-hmm. He is fun. But that brings a question.
Where's Nightblood?
Yeah.
Sanzan Volano has him.
Does he?
He had him in that book with the annoying little girl with the Tourette's.
Annoying little girl with Tourette's?
Or maybe not Tourette's. The one who needs to eat.
Oh, Edge Dancer?
Edge Dancer. He has Nightblood and Edge Dancer.
He doesn't have Nightblood right now.
All right. So Nightblood is then with Vivenna?
Maybe.
All right.
Who's to say? But it is a question to ask because Vasher was carrying Nightblood the last time we saw him on Warbreaker. So, who knows? I don't. Actually, I do.
But you won't tell.
No, that's true.
Like a true Ghostblood, you are sworn to secrecy.
Well, I don't know if I'm a Ghostblood. Again, I don't think that they would take me for my, they wouldn't want me because I don't really have the skills that they need. That's actually not entirely true. I do lockpick. But
well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Going back to our previous side quest, who do you think I fit better with? Out of the people that you mentioned, Dalinar, Sadius, I'm going to say his name right one of these days. Sadius, Dalinar, Taravangian, Ghostbloods, and Bridge 4. I think those are the ones that you gave me for a choice. In which camp do you think I fit better in?
Well, I want to be cheeky and tell you that you should be with Sadius, but
you can. That's fine.
I don't think it's entirely true, right? So, Taravangian. Here's the thing. I honestly could see you with Taravangian. Like, you're not conniving enough and secretive enough to be with the Ghostbloods. Taravangian is secretive, but he's secretive with his own people. Or like, he's secretive in terms of public eye, but not in private. So I could really see you being a part of his entourage.
Okay.
Yeah, that he has that, like, come to him when he has his mornings and then, like, test him and, like... And the thing is, the diagram that we hear all about honestly sounds kind of legit, right? Like, it's so robust. It's so well thought out with so many contingencies. It's kind of hard to deny it. And Dalinar is a bit of a kook because he's having these visions and, like, no one's seen the Radiance yet. We as the reader know something is going on, but the Rosharan people are just like, I think he's going insane. And Adolin's like, man, I might have to take over the throne. And then Renarin's just kind of sitting in the background like, I don't feel understood, being all weird and stuff. Supposedly has a blood issue.
As they did back then.
Yes. So, yeah, I think that you'd fit with Taravangian. I also don't think that you'd fit well with the bridge crews.
No, I don't do well in those kind of situations. And I'm not talking about the whole slavery thing, because anybody can be a slave in any situation. Just, happens to be the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're royalty, and then you're carted off to Babylon.
Or you put dung in Sadeas' soup.
Excuse me?
Rock did that.
How did I miss that? Or is that like in Rhythm of War, and you're just spoiling it for me?
No, he covers that. He covers that when they're talking about, why'd you get thrown in the bridge, or why'd you get thrown in the bridge cruise? You don't remember that?
I don't remember that, and I don't think we covered it when we covered that book.
Oh, all right, fair enough. Maybe he covers it in this book then. Yeah, I thought it was the last book. Either way, it's covered soon. The reason that Rock got put into the bridge cramp is because he put dung in Sadeas' stew.
Was it Chell dung?
I think it was actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good on Rock. I like Rock better.
Yeah.
I like Rock more. I like Rock more now.
There's a lot to Rock that we get in short sentences and short quips. So
yeah,
it's pretty fun.
Well, the whole thing with Syl, I think, is hilarious, where Syl knows how Rock feels about her and kind of, I think hams it up just to piss off Kaladin.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The only way that Syl knows how. And that's why I think she's the perfect Spren for Kaladin. What I said last episode, where he needs somebody like Syl, a little bit silly, no pun intended, to kind of screw with him a little bit. He needs that, because him walking around brooding and mumbling crap all the time is, not helpful to anybody.
Yeah.
But he does care about people, and he cares about his people, which is an uncommon trait in any world.
Fair enough.
For a young guy in charge of so many people,
Yeah.
Dalinar, obviously, you can tell he cares about people. He saves the bridge crew, but he's a seasoned war hero. He's a seasoned warmonger, both, right? And he knows
Very
people,
much.
And he cares about people. Even the way he saves Kaladin from Amaram's wrath when Kaladin loses his fucking cool and calls Amaram out, and we'll get to that later, but calls Amaram out for a duel.
Ugh, yeah.
Come on, Cal. But anyway, for as young as he is and the problems that he faces internally and externally, Kaladin's a decent dude to his folks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He is. Very much so.
Yeah. But anyway, we are back with Shallan in chapter 17 called A Pattern. You want to take this one on?
Sure. Shallan is sitting next to Bluth, who's guiding her wagon, and she's distracting herself from her worries and her talking to plants that she found. And she's drawing some sketches of a leaf and the Santhid that she saw during the travels. And then Bluth sees in one of her old notebooks that she's trying to recreate lost sketches. So as the caravan stops, Shallan sees smoke on the horizon, which we perceive to be this group that is following them, these bandits, right? Tvlakov says the deserters are going to give up the chase eventually, as long as they keep moving. So to distract Shallan's self further, she chats with two Parshmen, but they don't really respond. She then sketches some more plants, as she does to distract herself, when she notices a smoke of column in their current path. Now they're kind of trapped between two bandit groups, probably. And then they're not sure what to do. Do they go toward the group that's following them, or do they go to the group that's ahead of them? Which one is the friend, or which one could they convince to be a friend to help defeat the third group? And for anyone who's read The Art of War, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so you simply have to convince one of them that the third group is the enemy. And but that means going over to them. That means taking a risk, hoping that they don't just attack you first. Again, still sketching, she sees a woman's face. She goes into her cabin, her little wagon, to use knobweed to try to heal her feet. And she talks to Pattern a little bit to see if she's been healing. And he seems to not understand all the ins and outs of Stormlight at the moment, even though we've seen from Kaladin that some Stormlight will heal people. The question is, does Stormlight heal each of the Radiants, or is it just certain orders? We don't know yet. Pattern tries to share with Shallan a little bit about the light weaving and how the Knights Radiant work, but he's still rusty. He doesn't really remember. And when they move from the cognitive realm to the physical realm, they kind of lose all their memories for those who have forgotten. Pattern reveals that the reason he came is because he's a scholar, and he wants to know about humans and why humans keep killing their Spren, which is an interesting concept that I want to hear your thoughts on. Like,
Yep.
how are the Spren dying? The Knights Radiants did the same thing. Shallan denies that she's a Knight Radiant, which is true. She hasn't really spoken enough oaths to do that, and she might not, unless she can find a way to overcome her internal battles. She leaves the wagon and notices the smoke ahead is actually from burning wagons, not an encampment, which is a bit of a cliffhanger to hang on. Be sure to drop us a rating and help us spread the word if you're enjoying today's side quest. You can start by telling me about Spren, or you can tell me about your thoughts on the chapter.
Let's do that in reverse. What stood out to me in the chapter is Shallan's photographic memory, which is apparently tied to her light weaving. So I want you, resident scholar, to maybe help me and the audience who are the same boat as I am understand her memory, because this is part of the renaissances that the Knights Radiants have, right?
The Recreants?
No, well, her light weaving, the light weaving that helps her have the photographic memory.
What about it? Maybe I missed something.
Is that something that is true, the Knights Radiant, that this is one of their surges or renaissance?
Oh, we don't see anybody else who has photographic memory.
Right, but she is a Knights Radiant. She does have a photographic
yet.
memory.
I think that's just a Shallan thing, honestly.
Really? Okay. All right. Fair enough. But to answer your other questions, how Spren are killed, what we see when we see Syl die, it is caused by the breaking of the oath of who she's bonded to, being Kaladin in this case, and a quick search on Coppermind reveals that it's because they become Deadeye, whatever that is. What I would say that is they lose their essence that gives them cognitive abilities and the ability of the person they're bonded to see them, and they are destroyed. Their cognitive form is destroyed. Mm-hmm. They're still alive as spiritual entities, because she's talking to Stormfather later and saying, no, it's okay that he killed me. I think Kaladin is still the right person for this path, for this job, for this duty, and she is bonded back to him later. But it seems that they are killed, quote unquote. Well, it's not seems, it is, because we see that with Kaladin. It is his breaking his oath that kills Syl.
Yes, could kill her. Almost does.
Okay. That's why I said, quote unquote, killed. That's why he can't see her or hear her for a good portion of the book after he falls from that bridge.
But the thing is, you can kill your Spren. Kaladin just happened to, at the last moment, not do that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, there's I guess that's a detail you didn't pick up on. It's just that, like, Kaladin was on the verge of killing Syl. Basically, depending on what he chose, would have determined, like, if she died or not. And we see, as his journey continues in this book, that he made 2 oaths, and he can't fulfill both of them. And if he fulfills the wrong one, he will kill her, because he's broken his oath to her. And what he has said, which is part of the Knights Radiant, you have to stick to your oaths, and then you get access to your Spren, and you keep them alive. So
we move on to chapter 18, named Bruises, titled Bruises. Kaladin and Lopen guard Adolin and Renarin as they take instructions from Xyle. Lopen leaves to carry some orders by Kaladin, and Kaladin patrols the grounds and stops to observe Xyle and Renarin. Zyle tells Renarin to jump off the roof to the arena to practice being comfortable with his shard plate. Because apparently these things are heavy as hell.
Oh,
and
yeah.
being able to maneuver yourself in them, especially in battle, takes some training. Kaladin criticizes Renarin's clumsiness, but Zyle dismisses this and praises Renarin's attitude. Zyle offers to train Kaladin, and Kaladin declines. This is another one of those stupid things by Kaladin where, like, you have taken an oath, you know your path, you know your duty, you've done other things without reserve, knowing what you're supposed to do. But this thing, because it, puts him in the camp of the Light Eyes, he refuses. And here we have Zyle testing Kaladin's abilities with a blunted Shardblade to make sure he's ready to protect Adolin and Renarin. Zyle defeats Kaladin in a mock duel, though Kaladin did enough simulated damage to slow down the weapon's master, and he believes he would be able to give enough protection to Renarin or to Adolin. And here we have, Adolin making insulting comments, which enrage Kaladin, and he attacks Adolin. Adolin smashes Kaladin with a plate-enhanced punch. He's injured, and we have Zyle berating the prince, good old Adolin, for his carelessness. Kaladin heals himself with Stormlight and tries to attack Adolin again, but runs out of strength and collapses. Zyle compliments Kaladin, his tenacity and quick thinking, but says it won't be enough against Shardbearers.
Oh, yeah.
And again, this is where Kaladin doesn't think, and he needs people like Syl and Zyle to say, hey, good on you for doing this, but your little chill and your whole hang-up about Shardblades and Light Eyes, which they don't say directly, but it's all part the same package. All this stuff won't help you to fulfill what you have to fulfill. Kaladin asks Syl why he's lost his strength so suddenly, and Syl tells him Kaladin wasn't protecting anyone else. He wasn't protecting the people he's called to protect or swore to protect when it happened.
Right. Yep. This gets into what we talked about a minute ago, where, like, if you break your oaths, the Spren don't back you up.
And you seem to lose your powers. As a Knight Radiant, you're afforded certain powers, and if you don't fulfill your oaths, they don't work properly or at all in this case.
So he's not a Knight Radiant. Nobody's a Knight Radiant yet. They're squires.
Right, they're not that yet, but they are Knight Radiants in some sense.
But the reason there's a distinction here, and it's not just semantics, it's the access that you get is different at different levels, basically. Like, before you become a Radiant, it costs way more Stormlight to do a thing. After you become a Knight's Radiant, which I think is like the second oath, it costs less Stormlight to do the thing, and then as you continue to go down the path, it costs less and you can do more, and you can hold Stormlight for longer, et cetera, et cetera. And there's more, I guess I'll call it leniencies. So that's why there's a distinction here between him being a squire. But as readers, we don't know that yet. We only find out that he's a squire or was a squire after we get further into the book, when we see that, like, his platoon or brigade or whatever you call it, his group of bridgemen, like specifically Bridge 4, becomes squires because now he's a Knight Radiant. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
It's an important distinction. We just don't know that yet.
And we quickly go back to Shallan, but this is a flashback. Chapter 19, titled Safe Things. 5.5 years ago, Shallan is wearing a new dress that is gifted to her by her dad. The dress is that of a woman, as she is old enough now to cover her safe hand, which I have researched at length. What I found is Sanderson said, yep, it's a thing that happens. Don't worry about it. Safe hands. That's what I call. I'm like, all right, okay. So she starts to think
of her... It's like a quinceañera or a bat mitzvah. It's the equivalent. It's a coming-of-age moment, from gal to womanhood, if you will.
So this causes her to think of her mother, and then she stops immediately, like a candle suddenly snuffed out, as it said. Two maids bustle past, getting ready for guests. Shallan overhears only a soft whisper, and they say she saw the poor thing was in the room when it happened and hasn't spoken a word in 5 months. The master killed his own wife and her lover. Everybody seems to believe the lie that her dad killed the mom. We find out later, we know as the reader, that it's actually Shallan that killed her mom. Shallan thinks that because she does not speak, apparently to the maids, she also can't hear either, which is a typical Shallan quip.
Well, the other thing is, like, we do this in real life. You meet people who are like, oh, they can't understand me, or, they don't say anything, so they must be dumb. Like, we make these assumptions about people, and so this is just like a funny one where we're like, no, she can definitely still hear you.
A door suddenly slams, and her brother Halloran comes bearing gifts. And the gift is charcoal pencils and expensive paper. He missed her drawings and asks her to practice more. Well, he tells her that he misses her drawings and asks her to practice more. He tells her she needs to be strong, that she needs to look after the older brothers for him because he's leaving. He slams the door open again, this time admitting her father, Lindevar, and her father and brother begin arguing. He admits him in, meaning he lets the father in, and they begin arguing. And Halloran calls their father a murderer and summons a Shardblade. Lyn puts up his hands and says, you don't know what you think you know, your mother. But he stops there because Halloran cuts him off. Shallan manages to say no to Halloran, stopping him from killing his father. Halloran leaves, saying that he has important work to do, but warns their father that he'll be checking in on the house. So a pretty tense exchange between father and son there.
Yeah, so tell me, this scene becomes more vital. Okay, I don't want to overplay it. It's not imperative to the whole story, but like moments like this about Shallan's past are relevant to how the story progresses and unfolds. We see that clearly in this book later. What were your thoughts when Halloran came in and did this?
At this point in the story, without knowing future portions, I just thought it was typical of a broken household.
Yep.
The mother's dead. Everybody thinks that Lindevar did it. Halloran has this thing to do. He kind of the leader of the siblings, if you will. He is the only one that stands up to his dad. And so I just thought this was part and parcel of a dysfunctional household, that the son and father would have such a rift between them.
Yeah.
At least as,
Fair.
Me in chapter 19.
Right. And then, we get later in this book, we get the revelation that Kaladin killed Halloran.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big one.
Right. I'm sure you want to share this, but Halloran was working for
The Ghostbloods.
Yeah. So like then looking back on this, now what's your response? Where like he has something important to do, like, oh, okay. I actually think it wasn't the Ghostbloods. I think it was that Sons of Honor or whatever again. Brothers of Honor.
Was it?
I think that's right, because I don't think it was the Ghostbloods.
Let's look it up so make sure we were right.
But part of what Shallan takes with her is this, what do they call it? Soulcaster. When she goes to visit Yasta for the first time and tries to get in her good graces, that's broken. The Soulcaster's broken. That Soulcaster came from a mysterious person who happened to help the Devar family create their wealth. And that person was a Ghostblood.
Okay. That makes more sense.
So it's interesting that Shallan is also dealing with the Ghostbloods, but the Ghostbloods also killed Yasna. What is a gal to do?
So much intrigue in this little story we call Stormlight Archives, isn't there? But we quickly push forward into the present day. Chapter 20, The Coldness of Clarity. Shallan's caravan arrives at the source of the smoke, and they find burned out wagons and corpses strewn about, with a few survivors. As Shallan and Tlakov debate whether to approach the burning wagons or flee, a woman from those wagons confronts them and notes the deserters are chasing Shallan. Shallan offers the woman her protection, but she laughs and says Shallan can join her caravan to die, as they now face two possible enemy groups.
Well, quick pause for a second. I actually had to relook it up. My focus was split. Halloran actually got his Shardblade from the Skybreakers, which is led by Nail, who was the guy that we talked about in the last episode from Interlude about Yim.
Oh.
So Nail runs the Skybreakers. Halloran got his Shardblade from the Skybreakers.
Interesting. Some more intrigue.
Yeah, I didn't think it was the Ghostbloods. I also can't remember like the actual freaking name of that. Maybe it was the Sons of Honor. Yes. The Sons of Honor. So I was close. The Sons of Honor, not the Ghostbloods. The Sons of Honor have been trying to get the Heralds to return to help bring about like the next Desolation-ish kind of thing. Anyway, different than the Ghostbloods. The Ghostbloods are trying to do something else. Sorry, back to chapter 19.
Now, chapter 20.
20.
Using Stormlight to weave a disguise to make her appear as a noble, Shallan speaks to the deserters asking them for help against the other bandit group, offering amnesty and a fresh start. Vatha, the leader of the deserters, scoffs at her, but many of the other deserters are enticed and charge towards the battle to fight the bandits. Shallan finally convinces Vatha to help out, and since she used up all her Stormlight, she has to stay out of the fighting. Pattern compliments Shallan on her ability to use words to transform people without using soul casting, and Shallan draws a paper glyph for hope and awaits the outcome of the battle. Well, do you love books, audience? Do you love this podcast? Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss an episode.
I think is kind of funny is when Pattern compliments Shallan about her ability to use words to transform people without using soul casting. But if you go back a few chapters right after her shipwreck and she's talking to the stick, she's like, I want you to be fire. And the stick goes, I am a stick. And so her inability to use words to transform with soul casting is also, I don't know. I just find that funny. I am a stick.
Yeah, it's a fun event.
It's a fun little thing. So Shallan, decent with people, not decent with sticks. Might not work really well for her betrothed.
Okay.
She's your girl.
She is my girl. But quickly, we move forward.
Wait. You just reminded me of something. I just have to mention to the audience. So Slava takes care of our social media. We use Midjourney. And I was looking at his Midjourney pictures of Shallan.
Oh,
and
gosh.
she's this just like buxom vixen babe. Just this like drop dead gorgeous. I'm like looking at the Midjourney. I'm like, Slava, do you need to talk? Are you okay, bro? You having trouble over there? Because all these photos are like super sexy Shallan after she was shipwrecked, like half clothed. Do you want me to show them to the audience?
You can do whatever you want, but here's the thing. It's more than just sexy pictures of Shallan. They're thirst traps. I had to put in prompts that literally covered her up, fully clothed.
Make her more homely.
Conservative dress, no cleavage. Finally, they gave me a picture of Shallan on some rocks that resemble something that might look like her. It took like 7 prompts to get there because Midjourney was just giving me thirst traps. This is clearly not what I asked for.
I don't know. I read the prompts that kind of looked like what he asked for, folks.
Well, why don't you tell him what your wife thought when she opened up Midjourney? Because we all share one account. She sees these pictures of a buxom woman with her cleavage hanging out, and one of them she has leather gloves for some reason, like workers' gloves. She has leather gloves.
I'm just surprised that Slava didn't blame like, well, it's the amalgamation of the algorithm of all the other, young boys who are putting their prompts in to lead to this moment.
Well, I think it's obvious because if you look at a lot of the Midjourney portfolios, pictures that come out, illustrations that come out, and then you could view other people who have posted it publicly. And all of them that include women, well, all of them, a lot of them that include women are all thirst traps. If you read the prompts for some of these, none of them are, pornographic or sexy or anything. One example is a woman in a coffee shop drinking coffee. For some reason, she's half naked. I'm like, how? What? That's not what happens in real life. AI.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
A young woman with bright red hair in a full blue dress that covers her whole body and a leather glove on only one hand of her hands, sitting under the edge of a large, dark chasm. She has a leather satchel, an illustration in the style of high and dark fantasy. That was his final prompt, folks. Let's go back to his first prompt. I wish that we could just show you. These were. So his first prompt was, again, like he said, less descriptive. A young woman with bright red hair in a blue dress, in a leather glove, on one hand, sitting. And, yep, the first 4 photos, she's got her chels hanging out. Her hair's kind of a tizzy. And I was pulling up the Midjourney, and my wife is like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is not my fault. And then I had to, cover up Slava's angsty teenage boy prompts here to save my own butt. And they only got more sexy as he started to change it as a young woman in a bright red dress, in a conservative blue dress, still got her chels hanging out, wearing a leather glove on one hand, sits under the edge of a dark chasm, blah, blah, blah. Slava just doesn't know how to Midjourney well. This one, she's just fully coming out of the corset.
Yeah, some of them are...
For Midjourney being like, hey, we don't allow nudity on here. It's like, but we'll get pretty close. We can go on to the next chapter. I just wanted to share that with the audience.
The next chapter...
Jessica Rabbit. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Looks like Jessica Rabbit.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
If you know, you know.
Well, the next chapter is Ashes, chapter 21, and it is the final chapter for this episode of SideQuest. We're still with Shallan, and Shallan is offering a prayer for Bluth, who died fighting the bandits, though the bandits end up being defeated.
Woo!
Shallan speaks with the caravan owner, Makab, and his guard. 10. Shallan explains that she got the deserters to work for her and asked the caravan to accompany them to the Shattered Plains. Makab agrees. Vatha forcefully confronts Shallan and asks why she doesn't look majestic anymore. And Shallan dissembles about his conscience tricking him. Shallan tries to reassure Vatha that she will protect him from prosecution for desertion, but he does not believe her, and Pattern tricks Vatha into letting Shallan go. Flakov confronts Shallan with a conspiracy theory about Bluth being a bandit, but Shallan disproves it and demands that the non-Parshman slaves in compensation for saving his life. So she wants them as payment.
Yep.
Shallan frees the slaves, but offers to hire them as servants. Shallan watches as one of the women from the caravan offers a paper prayer with a glyph of thanks written on it to the one-eyed deserter, who accepts it and burns it as the rest of the caravan observe. And who is this one-eyed deserter?
The slimy Gaz, who was in charge of Bridge 4,
There he is.
stealing Kaladin's spheres. So we are coming up, like Shallan is getting closer to the Shattered Plains because they left recently. She's almost there. Can she fulfill her promises? Because she doesn't have any money.
But as I expected, she does fulfill her promises. We'll talk about it in the coming chapters. But she's able to do right by these people.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
What do you think about this chapter? Did anything stand out here?
Her confrontation with Vatha, her being able to stand her ground. Yes, Pattern had to help her, but her being able to stand her ground, I think that's just part and parcel of Shallan's personality. Having the father that she had and the life that she's lived, I think Vatha wasn't that big of a challenge for her. Despite her being scared and obviously distressed by the situation, she was able to handle it pretty well, and she succeeded.
Yeah.
But again, this is the character that is my character. I like her, so I'm following her.
Right. You like her a lot. Regularly spinning up mid-journey prompts based on what she looks like. Yeah, we know. We understand. I don't think your wife has seen our mid-journey.
I showed it to her. She laughed really hard.
That's not the response that I got.
Oh, okay. Well, that's maybe because I didn't try to hide them from my wife. And so I'm like, hey, you want to see something funny?
I didn't know they were going to be there. I needed to get back on Midjourney to do work. And then I pulled it up and she's looking over. She's like, what are you doing? Working? It's not really, doesn't really look like work. I'm marketing things. Yeah, I'm sure. But what I was going to say is after this time with Pattern basically, chirping at Vatha as almost like a yak back. Do you remember yak backs from like the 90s? He's like a little recorder.
Yeah. Yeah, actually I do.
That's what I think of when I think of Pattern doing this little trick where he like speaks on someone else's behalf in their same voice. I wish that this happened more often, not just with Pattern, but with other people's Spren, because I think it's a really great distraction technique. Like, hey, go do this. And then they do that. It doesn't actually happen as much in the story as I think it could have. But granted, like good storytellers don't reuse the same thing till it's become bebludgeoned, or what's the phrase you use? Belabored.
Before we end, because we're coming up on a full episode here, let's do a quick side quest. And I like the question you put in here. If you could bring back one of the Knights Radiance today, which order would be most useful to you? The Radiance each had a unique ability, Edge Dancer, Skybreakers, etc., etc. More pointedly, which surge would be most valuable? Regrowth, Gravitation, Oaths of Law and Justice?
I think an easy answer is Regrowth and Healing as a valuable one in society, because that would be an absolute game changer. But if I could bring one back, well, I really like Windrunners. That's fun. But I'm kind of debating between Stone Wards and Windrunners. Stone Wards you haven't encountered yet. I think this is a question we should come back to in the future as well.
Out of the ones we met, which one do you like?
Okay, of the ones we've met, then I'm going to go with Windrunners so far. Although, because of Nail, we have met a Skybreaker, although we don't know what his powers are. So we've met Skybreakers and Lightweavers and Windrunners and Lift, who you've spoken about, but I don't recall us meeting yet in book 2 here, Edge Dancers. And this is just all that we know about currently. Well, there's also Yasna, who we don't know what she is yet because she died, but she had a Spren, which we'll find out about later. So I'm going to go with Windrunners. Flying through the sky sounds like a good old time.
Same. Out of the ones we met, because I know some of the other ones, because I researched them a little bit.
Yeah.
So out of the ones we met so far, I would have to say Windrunners. Although the Dust Bringers also sound fun.
Yes, they do sound fun. We haven't met a whole lot of them. That's going to be the back half of the Stormlight Archives. And actually, I was misspeaking. I'm not. It wasn't Stone Wards. It was Bondsmiths that I would maybe bring back. Anyway, that is the show for today, folks. We will return next time where we discuss more chapters from Roshar, looking at chapters 22 through 34. 13 more chapters. We're calling it Part 3 of Words of Radiance. As always, be sure to drop us a line in the comments with where you're at in the Stormlight world or what you found interesting in today's episode or the Cosmere in general. If you've got little hints and tips and fun, quirky things that we haven't known about, we would love to hear them.
Thank you for joining us today on this side quest. Be sure to share this episode and others with your fellow book lovers. Join the conversation on Instagram and YouTube.